Hey guys, if you're watching this video, you probably have blown fork seals like I do on my 2007 Yamaha FZ6. So a word of advice before we get going and get started, get the right freaking tools, because I started this job not having an axle fitting, so I can get the axle off, ordered on Amazon for $12. And I also didn't have a fork seal driver. Those are like $45 on Amazon. So let's back up. I'll show you exactly what I did here. The first thing we need to do is get the front tire off the ground. The FZ6 has a center stand, so you can basically do maintenance wherever you want to. And using this little block of wood I found, and then just slide it right under there. Alright, so on my bike, it's this bolt here, this bolt right here, and then you have to just undo this little plastic clamp up top. Now that we have the fender off, we can start undoing the brake calipers. For my bike, it's these two bolts right here. A lot of bikes actually have this reflector here that actually holds the caliper on as well. So your bike might have the exact same thing. Be careful not to yank on the lines or anything. I mean, it wouldn't kill them, but it's better just not to have any pressure on them at all. So my philosophy here at Inja's Garage is just keep everything as stress-free as possible. Alright, so to get the axle off, there's a pinch bolt right here that you need to undo. And you need to also unscrew the axle bolt itself. It's a 19mm hex. I went ahead and bought the tool. This one was $11 on Amazon. It's for all bikes to get the axles off. I recommend just getting this. I tried to weld one or make, ghetto rig, but didn't end up very well because I suck at welding. Oh, frick! Well, I succeeded in breaking the sketchy tool that I made. Alright, well, looks like I won't be fixing my bike today. So I just got this. So let's see if I can loosen this up. The axle on my bike is super tight. I'm not sure if it came from the factory that way, or the other owners of this bike didn't ever loosen it, and so it just kind of seized up. There we go. Alright, so as you can see, that used a good deal of force. Even now it feels like it's still stuck. Oh yeah. So I used a good deal of force to get that out. Now it's coming a lot easier. The FZ6, it actually, you can actually unscrew the axle all the way. It doesn't have 4 pinch bolts on it and a nut on the end of the axle like most sport bikes do. I know the R6 and R1 have that. This one, you literally just unscrew it and just wiggle it on out, just like that. Making sure you hold the wheel up, and it slides right out. Put it on a nice surface that's not dirty. Unfortunately, I'm over a bunch of dirt, so that doesn't help with mine. Make sure that these bearings do not fall in the dirt. You can clean them up. I recommend just cleaning them off anyway, so it doesn't really matter if you get dirt on them. Alright, so with the bearings out as well, in a safe place. Oh, note too, the bearings, this one was from the right side of the wheel right here. This is from the left side. Some bikes actually have different size bearings on either side, so make sure when you take your bearings off, you put them on the exact same side as they came off of. Alright, so making sure we don't bust our rotors up. Just wheel that on out of there. Alright, so once you have your wheel off, just make sure there's nothing connected to the fork. Sometimes there's an ABS sensor on some motorcycles. Disconnect that, disconnect whatever else is on the forks, so you have nothing hanging when you loosen them up. So the way to get the forks out is there is just a triple clamp at the very bottom, the lower triple clamp, and the triple tree, there's just one bolt in there. So loosen up the bolts. I will say that they'll take a little bit of torque to get out. They tighten them pretty tight, but I can do it by hand, so I'm sure you can as well. So first of all, we're going to loosen up the lower triple clamp. It'd be a lot easier if I had a T-handle wrench, but I do not. I'm but a humble man. Alright, so I'm going to turn the forks this way. Alright, and so once we loosen up this, there's going to be nothing holding the fork up. So what you need to do is grab the fork. In this case, this one's super oily. And so when you start turning it and getting it nice and loose, Again, using a T handle would be so much easier on this job, but it's definitely not required. There it is, see? And the fork slides right out. I will say too, don't wiggle the fork too much. Just cause a few slight vibrations with your hand. You don't want to be distorting the forks or the clamps. Okay, so same thing for the other side. Loosen it up while you have your hand on the bottom supporting it, just so it does not fall. Just like that. And there it is. Alright. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get the preload adjuster cap loosened up. I should have done this when it was on the bike with the triple tree on it still, just so it stays in place a little better, but luckily I already tried busting this one open. Luckily this one was loose enough to where I just put it between my legs like this and then loosened it up just like that. Took a little bit of force still, but luckily for me I don't need a vise. I don't know if I can do it with this one. There it is. Alright. Okay, so both the caps are loosened up. I guess it's just I've been in the weight room too much, so I just tear these things right apart. But if you haven't been in the weight room, you might need to take those off when they're still on the bike. Okay, now that those are loosened, there's little bolts right here in the end. Alright, so this is the right fork, this is the leaky one. So this one still had the pinch bolt in it, so I'm just going to take it out before I start doing this. Usually these bolts are extremely hard to get out. This holds the damper rod in. But let's see if I can just do it by hand. Nope, I'm gonna need a vise for this. Alright, so I'm back with a vise. I put a rag under the fork because I don't want to jack it up. So all I needed to do, this vise is free, but all you need to do really is get enough force on it to get this the bolt out. So I'm just gonna, it does take a little bit of force. With enough pressure, you can break it free, just like that. Sure. Alright, and right when I started loosening this, the top portion of it was spinning with the nut. It kind of confused me for a while, but figured it out. So now you just want to remove this bolt, and you want to hold it up like this too, because this will start draining the oil. So this bolt always comes with a copper washer on it. Just make sure you get that washer out or don't lose it. That would not be good. Alright, so now I'm just going to pour the oil out. Kind of give it some pumping, some pump action. Alright, and before I started this job, I actually didn't have the right tools. I didn't know I didn't have the right tools. But you need a fork, or a seal driver. But since I didn't feel like going to town to get some PVC pipe that fit my the tube, I kind of just made a ghetto rig. It'll work fine, but you can get some PVC pipe. The tool, the seal driver, it's like $40 or $50. So just get some PVC pipe. It works the exact same and it'll do the trick. It comes pretty easy, especially if your fork has been leaking. There's so much oil in it that it should just pop right up just like this. Go around. Don't pry on the outside too much. Just give it some turns and it should come right off just like that. Okay, so this is an old dust cover. If you have one, if you have a dust cover that you got, just make sure you don't accidentally put this one back on. So I just throw it over there. So now you're gonna see a little ring in here that you need to take out. Find the end point where it's open and just unclip it. Alright, so just pop it right out, take it right off, set it aside, make sure you don't lose it. Okay, so now using the just using the tube like a slide hammer now, just with a few nice little hits. Like I can already see the fork seal coming out just like that. So this will still have just a little bit of oil in it, doesn't really matter. So you can just set this aside for now, because the FZ6 The forks have a little metal thing in the very bottom that you'll find. Doesn't come out with the fork tube, so it's always stuck in the bottom, so just make sure you don't lose it or dump it out accidentally. Okay, and so now you have the washer and the bushing. So take it out, just put it in order on your towel. Alright, so now I can take this all the way off, if I have. Okay, so this does have a spring in it, so it will come off. It won't come off too hard. I'll just say that. It's not going to shoot anywhere or anything. You can even undo it with your hand and it's fine, like I'm going to do right now. Alright, so I'm just going to take this tool. There it is. Oh, frick. Okay, that's not what you want to do. So now that you have that off, you can dump out the contents of your tube here. There's going to be a spacer right here. There's going to be a washer in front of the spring. Alright, so now you have your spring. Just like that. It's usually covered in oil, but you're going to get a little messy on this job anyway, so don't even worry about it. Alright, so I'm going to take these out just because I'm going to give them a slight cleaning before. So there's the rod and another spring. And that's all of it. I'm just going to give it a small cleaning before we put it back on. Spray it out. You can already see all the rust coming off. The new seal has some soft rubber on the bottom that seals all the oil out. So that soft rubber, if it gets damaged, it's going to start leaking prematurely, so try to just avoid that. So before you put this tube back in and start putting everything back together, you really want to make sure that this is clean. This area right here where you're going to be putting the bushing, the washer, and the seal. If it's really dirty, it's just going to start leaking prematurely again. Okay, now that it's all clean, we are ready to put this fork back together. So the FZ6, what you want to do first is actually put the piece that was in the lower of this, you need to put that back in after you give it a nice cleaning. Alright, so now that's clean and dry, I'm going to put it back into the bottom of this. Just slide it down, just like that. Pop it into place. Alright, seems good. So let's put this in nice and gentle, just so you don't jack anything up. Just like that. Make sure it's still sitting down there. Alright, and so let's start getting everything back together. First goes the bushing. Just make sure there's not too much crap on it. Alright, so the bushing first, there, and then the washer. Alright, and so now you want to set these in place. Alright, so bring it down here. It's easier to do on the ground. Put a towel down so you don't screw anything up. So the bushing and the washer go in really easily. Doesn't take too much force. Alright, and before you put the fork seal on, cannot stress this enough, you want to make sure the whole pipe is clean. A lot of people actually suggest making it some specific things to get the seal on without even touching the metal, but that's really unnecessary. It doesn't make a difference as long as the tube is clean. It's not gonna damage it at all with rust spots. So for the tube, I always just give it a slick oil here before putting the seal on. It just makes it slide on a lot easier. And then also put some oil on the seal as well, just to make it slide in easier. Right here is a lot of soft rubber to keep the oil out. So you want to make sure that gets as little damage to it as possible. Alright, push the seal in finger tight here, just to get it started. Alright, now that we have it finger tight, just kind of in there, let's get our tool. Okay. Now we're ready to drive the fork seals down. This will take a little bit more force than the bushings, than the bushing and washer, but not too much. In there, mine's good. here. Get your tool off. That looks good. And you'll know if it's in the right spot when you put this clip back on. So put it in there, and there's a little ridge for it. Get it pressed in there. Alright, the dust cover just slides right in there. Just get it finger tight. Don't mess up. So what I like to do with these parts, before putting them back in, just give them a nice rub down with a clean rag that you have. Just gets all the grime and dirt and hairs and whatnot off of it. And then just take some of the oil you dumped out. It doesn't have to be the new stuff. If you have new oil laying around, by all means, but it doesn't have to be, just to get this nice and lubed up again. Put this guy back in. Like that. Spring goes in this way. Like that. Washer. Spacer. Alright, so now what you gotta do, in order to get this bottom bolt back in, what you're gonna actually have to do is screw on the top of this. Now that it's not going anywhere, now you can screw this in. Yeah, that should do it right there. Tell you what, that's probably 18 foot-pounds of torque right there. Whew. So that's good. Now we can take the cap back off and fill it up with oil. So let's do that. So this bike has 15.79 ounces in each fork tube. So I use this measuring cup here, made sure it's all clean on the inside and the outside, except for a hair. 15.79 ounces for the FZ6. Alright, that should do it. Alright, so I use this little measuring cup here. Just pour the oil in the tube. It's as tight as you can get it. We're going to also tighten it down just a little bit more once it's on the bike. And that's as tight as I'm going to get it for now. Just give it a few nice pushes down just to get the oil started. Alright, now that the fork seals are rebuilt, we can start getting the bike back together. So just reverse everything you just did, and there you have it. Make sure you have a wood block for setting your coffee on. And I had to kind of eyeball the alignment of the forks since they rotate individually. So what I did, just to make sure the alignment was good before I put the wheel on, I put the axle back in, and so right when I put the axle in, it wasn't perfectly aligned. You could tell, you can look straight through the bolt hole right here. They weren't quite aligned, so I just had to loosen this, give it a slight adjustment, and now they're perfectly lined up, and it threads right in, nice and easy. So what I'm going to do now is take the axle back out and then put the wheel back on. And along with the axle too, I'm going to clean these off really good before I put them back in, just so I get the maximum horsepower. Yeah. Okay, now that the spacers and the axle are clean, we're going to go ahead and put some grease on it so it spins freely in the wherever it's spinning. If you squeeze the brake while the caliper is off, you'll have to pry apart these pistons in here for the brake because they'll be clamped together. So in my case, I don't need to do that. I can stick it right back on without any problems, since, as I said it before, I'm smart and I didn't screw anything up. Hit the front brake and make sure it's braking properly. Alright, looks good. Okay, take out the wood block under the headers, and I'm just going to get on the bike, pull the brakes a couple times, make sure they're good, push down on the front just a little bit. Alright, so now that we bounced it a few times, let's go ahead and just start tightening everything up. And before I tighten everything all the way back up, giving it the proper torque, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a few more bounces. But I do want to make sure that everything's getting tightened as it's getting worked into place. Okay, now give it a few more solid bounces. And I'm going to take the block out from underneath the wheel for a second here, just to make sure everything's spinning. But it looks good to me. So let's get everything tightened back down. So this, you do want the block under the wheel, just so you can put some pressure on the axle. Alright, so that's how you change the fork seals on an 07 FZ6. That was my first time doing it, and what I learned is that it's a lot simpler than you think it is, before you do it and you learn how to do it. So save yourself $350 for the shop to do it. Just buy the tools for $50 and the parts for $50, and do it yourself, learn how to do it. Chances are, if you enjoy riding now, you'll enjoy riding later, and you'll have fork seal problems in the future. Invest in your own future. Just buy the tools yourself, do it, save money every single time this happens. Also, I learned, buy the right tools. I didn't have an axle fitting, so I couldn't get the axle off, and the fork seal driver, that cost me a day. And if you have an 04 to 09 FZ6 as well, make sure to subscribe. I'll be posting more maintenance videos and whatnot on the FZ6, upgrade videos, all that kind of stuff.